The short-lived series from 1985, Otherworld. Mm, ee, mm. Otherworld only lasted for 8 episodes. Just 8. I was so disappointed. I loved that show as a kid. I was growing up on a farm and I would run around and try to get chores done enough to beg my dad to let me go in early because it was in a time slot just a little bit too early to catch after milking and everything was done. Just 8 episodes. If you missed it, you can find it on YouTube. There are copies, not always the clearest, that are freely available. And I have heard that you can actually buy the disc set on Amazon if you're still using disc-driven machinery equipment to view stuff. Otherworld has all these great characteristics of history, alternate history, interdimensional travel. It really is cool. So the family goes to, well, they're in Egypt. They're left by a guide in a dark room in the Great Pyramid during a rare alignment of like 6 planets. They end up in a parallel Earth, apparently, another planet populated by people that look like us, but everything about it's different. And they begin wandering that world, following a trail of obelisks, trying to find their way to a gateway that comes back to our world. And there's a lot of, for that era, a lot of interesting discussion throughout the 8 episodes of how the parallel dimensions work, whether or not they're in time sync, whether they're 2 wheels spinning at different speeds, if they were to get back, how much time would have passed, etc., especially as they increasingly in the 8 episodes find evidence that, of course, they're not the first people from our world to end up in that world. The really interesting thing about watching it now, and I binged it over the last couple of days, how much Otherworld clearly draws on science fiction that was already known, uses some relatively common cultural paradigms. I mean, there's a Beauty and the Beast episode that's sort of redone in an interesting way. And yet how much science fiction it foreshadows. There's a lot of things that look like they led to future sci-fi. So you have some basic Star Trek, Lost in Space sort of feel. Even though they're on one planet, they are wandering from district to district, from province to province, where different groups of people live differently, but we get the idea there's an empire that they talk about the unification war that unified these provinces under an imperial rule. But one society is completely female dominated. We would see that again on Star Trek with Angel One, for example. They go where there's all robots, but humanoid androids that mimic family life, etc. Very much good stuff from science fiction before. And because they're sort of lost, there's the Lost in Space feel. They're going from place to place and meeting new kinds of people. There's sort of the Star Trek feel. Oddly enough, maybe because I just recently had watched it all, the only existing season of Logan's Run. Logan's Run, converted to a TV series, was quite similar. The post-apocalyptic world, but far enough removed that they're visiting how society survived and what new ones are growing. And there's some of that. These folks are kind of on the run from security forces in Otherworld and going from province to province and meeting new people that live different ways. So there's a lot of interesting overlap. One of the things that I think really pointed to the future is I was surprised how much it felt like the Hunger Games. Now, I watched it as a kid, but like I said, it had been a long time ago. I didn't remember a lot of details. Watching it now, after seeing the Hunger Games movies, the Otherworld, there's an odd mixture of ancient and modern, of a society with big stone obelisks and little crystals that are like keys, and yet they have advanced technology of androids and yet their airship that we saw, the vampire attack vessels, were basically, they were kites, motorized kites. I'm trying to think of what the word is for those things. We have them like gliders, but motorized. We have them in our world, but I don't know the name for them. So there's this weird technology that is ancient, futuristic. The computers, the screens and things in some places are clearly, they're sort of retro now, meant to be futuristic. Then they seemed ultra modern future. And mixed in there some pretty simple motorized vehicles and things that were known to us. So the Hunger Games, very much reminiscent of the Roman Empire and its provinces, but they're called districts, and specializing in different things that are needs for the imperial capital, is very much like the provinces in Otherworld towards the imperial capital, and that mixture of that ancient Roman feel of everything in the Hunger Games, and yet it is futuristic, and that same feel from Otherworld. So it is really interesting. It would be interesting to note if any of the creators of the Hunger Games watched Otherworld. But of course, that leads to the obvious influence, to me, of Stargate. Because by the time you get to the movie Stargate, which leads to the whole Stargate universe and phenomenon, well, the Stargate is discovered in Egypt, and there's this deep connection to the Egyptians. And I mean, this Otherworld could easily be written in as a prequel of some fashion. These people found this chamber, and because of the alignment in some other fashion, they were stargated to this other world that is one of many that they didn't get to in the show Stargate, and that these people are actually from our Earth in the 80s before the gate is uncovered in the movie in the 90s. And it flows together well enough that it would be completely plausible as for Otherworld to be a prequel to Stargate. So again, that overlap in all of these sci-fi concepts, both before it occurred and after it occurred. And of course, as a young man, as a boy, just being interested in girls, watching that show, Jana Lee, who just was adorable and had been on Family Ties and made other TV show appearances, and was Princess Metra by the end. Anyway, but Otherworld, a great concept. There were some episodes like the Beauty and the Beast one, where it was like kind of like, oh well, everybody gets to something like that at some point. Not my favorite, move along. But a lot of good episodes, good solid use of themes that maybe weren't all that odd, but were well done the way they revisited them in the experience of these humans traveling this other world. And a really root core family values sort of underlying message of what they go through to keep their family together. And really, ultimately, it is the story of a family going through this. Whereas if they made it today, it would be, some sexy person traveling that world, having new romances everywhere they went, and something like that, rather than this was a core of a family that would be in any sort of family-made drama of the time, or family-based comedy drama or comedy, whatever, and planted in this science fiction setting, and seeing how they deal with it, which was part of the attraction. So anyway, Otherworld, go find it, go watch it. I loved it. Have a great day. We'll see you again soon.